8 people are seen getting ready for an employment contract exam. They all walk into the examination room where they are all seated. An armed guard enters the room, and shortly after, a man who introduces himself as the Invigilator. He addresses the candidates, telling them the 3 rules for this peculiar exam. First rule, they are not allowed to talk to him or the guard. Second rule, they are not to spoil their paper intentionally or unintentionally. And third rule, they mustn't leave the room. If anyone breaks one of these rules, they shall be disqualified. The Invigilator sets the timer to 80 minutes and leaves the room. The candidates turn their attention to their papers, but all they notice is blank space. As they are all monitored, a female candidate begins to write why she believes she deserves this job. The guard, however, stops her and takes her out. One of the candidates has already been disqualified. As the rest remain in their seats, one of the candidates points to the things the Invigilator didn't say, which is that the candidates can safely talk with each other. Teamwork is required, therefore, and the 7 candidates agree to work together. The male candidate, who began the conversation, appoints nicknames to everyone in the group. White, black, brown, blonde, brunette, dark, and deaf are the nicknames given. Brunette suggests that the papers are written with invisible ink, one that can only be shown under a special light. As the rest continue to throw in ideas, Brunette tells everyone to put their papers close to the light. Black mentions that a different type of light, like infrared, is probably needed. Brunette agrees with him, and Blonde observes the narrow indents in the wall, saying that they should find the light switch. A radical solution is proposed then, as the team begins to shatter the current light tubes. The room turns dark, and black light is turned on. Yet, the papers don't reveal anything. Dark notices that there are more light tubes, and, as they shatter these as well, the UV light that is emitted doesn't show anything either. Frustration starts to set in, and White comes up with a new idea. Taking the paper of the disqualified candidate, he shades it, following Blonde's earlier advice. No use as well. So White suggests applying fluids. Black uses saliva, while White urinates on the disqualified paper. Again, nothing happens. The candidates are now at their wits' end when suddenly Deaf starts murmuring. As it turns out, Deaf is a Frenchman. Brunette, who speaks French, translates to the rest. Deaf moves the pieces of shattered glass from the broken light tubes over his paper, saying if they can see that, the papers are showing themselves. White considers him a nutjob, and Brown proposes a theory of his own. He says that the company board is playing a game on them, mentioning that their different ethnicities is what brought them all here, for the board members to have fun. Brown is revealed to be a gambler, and points to the mechanisms of the system that manipulate ignorant people like them. Brown also deduces that Dark is a shrink, but Dark says that she is a mental health student who so happens to know a few things about the company they're all struggling to get a job for. This arouses Brown's suspicion, who confronts Dark, but Black backs her up, saying that some did a little research prior to the exam. At that point, Dark speaks about the company's history as the world's largest medicine manufacturing company, aiming to end the existing pandemic. Dark gives them a clue and points to the human longevity the company stands for. Black says that the company has found a cure for the pandemic, which will bring new job applications. Brunette asks Dark if the medicine is valid, and White asks her if she is sick. Brunette admits that she has a colleague of hers that is sick, and that is why she applied. White tells her that this may have disqualified her without even breaking the 3 rules laid out by the Invigilator. Blonde and Dark discuss the mysterious CEO of the company, and Brunette performs a risky move. She approaches the guard and searches his pockets, retrieving a lighter. Black mentions that the chemical ink in the papers can be brought up by heat, but Brunette dismisses that idea, pointing at the smoke alarm in the ceiling. As water is excluded, Brunette says that any kind of fluid could be in the sprayers above. Black sees that they are surrounded by safety lights, making the exam room a dark room where photographs are developed. As the papers are also photographic, this idea seems probable enough. Brunette goes to activate the smoke alarm, but she can't reach the sensor. White then hands her one of the candidates' papers, and Brunette lights it up and turns on the sprayers. Unfortunately, there is only water in them, and the papers persist to remain blank. Brunette then realizes that her paper is missing. White has used it to light the fire, and that means that Brunette has been disqualified. The guard comes and takes her out, but not before Brunette swears at White. Black confronts White, and it is revealed that the lights in the room are triggered by voice command. Death begins to whimper, and White teases him, making him tear up his paper and put it in his mouth. Death is disqualified and taken out of the room. Black accuses White of being dangerously selfish, but White says that he doesn't need them as he already knows the question. Black knocks out White with a punch, and Brown assists him, tying him to a chair. Black gags White and says that they should take him out to disqualify him. Dark goes to help him, but Blonde argues that they too run the risk of being disqualified because the Invigilator explicitly said that if anyone chooses to leave the room, they will be disqualified. Seeing her point, they stop. White regains consciousness and moans. Black smacks him in the face, telling him to be quiet, but White keeps moaning. Dark allows him to speak, and White mentions that he suffers from the pandemic and needs to take a pill. Black finds that hard to believe. White yells that the pill is in his left pocket, but Black finds nothing there, and White accuses them of taking it. Black keeps him tied, and soon White passes out again. Brown then speaks his mind and sets himself against Dark. He mentions that Dark knows a great deal of the exam and accuses her of working with White. The others seem to be in league with him, and Brown soon enough detains Dark with his belt. Black asks him what he is doing, and Brown starts interrogating Dark. Taking one of the papers, Brown intimidates Dark, telling her that he will cut her on her inner thigh. He asks her what the question is. Dark asks for help from the others, who simply stand there and watch. Brown sees cuts on Dark's legs and taunts her. He cuts her thigh, and Black attacks Brown, who stuns him with a single move. Brown goes on to torture Dark again, this time threatening to cut her eyeball. At the last moment, Dark screams that she has told him everything she knows, and Brown then backs down, seeing that she is telling the truth. Brown sits in his chair, and Blonde releases Dark, handing her a band-aid for the fresh wound in her leg. Soon, White begins to have convulsions. Blonde asks Black if White is faking it, but Black sees that the convulsions are genuine, as his wife has died from the same illness. Black is also a carrier, and knows. Blonde asks for the pill to save White's life, but no one claims to have it. While searching each other, Dark deducts from Brown's chewing gum that he is the one who has taken White's pill. Searching under Brown's desk, Dark finds the pill and goes to give it to White. Brown stops her, saying that Dark is too dangerous to be saved. A struggle ensues, and Brown tosses the pill into a grate. Black and the rest try to retrieve it, but to no avail. White has stopped convulsing and sinks into a coma. Blonde tries to take the pill, but her fingers can't fit through the gate. Dark ascertains that White is in need of medical assistance, but no one is willing to take him out of the room, in fear of disqualification. Dark alone starts to push him out, as White's nose bleeds. Dark then makes the error of addressing the Invigilator via the surveillance camera, and she is disqualified. Taken outside, Dark shouts, saying that she already works there. Blonde, using a hairpin, succeeds in retrieving the pill and saves White's life. White comes around and says that there isn't really a question. The question is the exam, and the answer is one of them. This leads to the assumption that only one will get the job. With no other choice but raw force, White and Black fight for the guard's gun. Black wins the gun and points it at White. Black pulls the trigger, but nothing happens. White attacks Black and stabs him with a pencil. Brown is also eliminated, and White takes the gun. Examining the gun, White sees that it has a fingerprint safety. Using the guard's hand, White points the gun at Black and Brown, telling them that he wants to be alone. Brown understands that White wants to be the last one in the room so that he can get the job, and goes to rip his paper. White stops him and tells him to walk out, instead lest the guard comes and takes him out. Brown complies and leaves the room, saying to White that they deserve him. Next one is Black, who refuses to do what White says. White, however, does not relent and aims the gun at Black. Blonde intervenes and offers to leave the room. Passing next to Black, she whispers him to be ready. At the threshold, Blonde shouts, lights out, and hides. Black goes for White, who shoots at him. After the gunshots, White brings the lights back on and sees that Black has been shot in the chest. Black collapses, and White sees Blonde's foot at the doorway. As the timer ends, White lowers the gun and steps away from the guard. He walks towards Blonde and glares at her before finally moving away from her. Blonde sighs in relief, but then notices Def's eyeglasses on the floor and recollects his words about seeing clearly. White stands in front of the one-way mirror and yells that he is the answer. The guard walks up on him and grabs him by the shoulder. He shows in his watch that the time hasn't ended yet and that few seconds still remain. Checking the clock under the mirror, White presses the red button, which sets the timer anew. He then presses the blue button, which speeds up the timer. Def has set the timer a minute ahead and thus, in the chain of events, eliminated White. As the guard takes White away, Blonde picks up Def's eyeglasses and a piece of broken glass. She puts the shard under the glasses and reads question 1 on her paper. Def then walks into the room. Blonde sees it all clearly then. She walks up to Def and hands him his eyeglasses. She knows that the CEO is standing in front of her. As the invigilator walks into the room, Blonde replies, no, as the only question that has been applied there was from him when he said before the exam if there are any questions. Being happy to accept her into their ranks, Blonde is dubious about accepting. She doesn't want to be part of a company that has allowed a man to die. The invigilator implies that Black isn't dead, and it is revealed that Black has been shot with a bullet containing a pill of cellular regeneration. Blonde is amazed by all this, and, smiling, she shakes the CEO's hand, ultimately accepting the job.